Okay, right. I've been asked to do another one of these space pictures, including rockets and things. So I've done a few of these before. Stuff like this only takes a few minutes when you know how to do it. I think it looks really nice, but it's actually a really simple thing to do. So to include rockets and things like that, you're including lots of elements. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and go through some of the basics with you again. I've already done the videos on most of this, but I'll just add a few extra bits as we go. Okay. I'm working on blue paper. It's a kind of craft paper, sugar paper. It's quite rough because that works better with the pastels that I'm working with today. Chalks and pastels are essentially the same thing, not oil pastels, they're different. We're just talking about essentially it's kind of crushed limestone with pigment added. I think, I'm not entirely sure, but I think chalk has got a much smaller amount of pigment, whereas pastels have got a far higher concentration of pigment and they're a much better quality. But chalks work just as well for what we're doing. Right, let's have a look. Well, I'm going to put in a really simple foreground. A few rocks and things here. I often do rocks just because I like the shapes. On this one, I went in a different way. I did sort of much softer dunes. Can you see how they're just softer curves as they go around? But I tend to do rocks because I like them. So I've got that. And then I'm going to put my city in, but I'm going to do that later. I want to put my sky in first. I'm going to put a planet in. I tend to do the kind of big planet with the rings just because I think it looks good. I'll stick one in here. If you want to use a template to draw around, great. If you're happy doing it freehand, which is the way I do it, not a problem at all. And can you see how I'm using my arm almost as a lever to give me that curved shape? So that will be the main planet. Over here I'll have a source of light, and then I'll put my city in here where it kind of just drags in across like that. I might have a rocket. If I'm doing a ship or something flying off, if it's going there, all of the features of the picture are going to be over this side, so it might be there or it might be going that way, but I don't want it just to be dragging over this side. Okay, let's get the sky in place. Because it's a blue piece of paper, I'm going to start just by blackening things up. I'm going to leave a lighter gap. I'm not going to worry too much. In fact, I'll just roughly mark off that. So I want my source of light to be. I am going to put another planet there because I think it always looks good having two. Right, and on with the black pastel. And it's not like colouring in with a felt tip or anything like that. I'm just putting this powder, this dust, onto the paper. You can see I'm leaving these sorts of gaps in here as well. I'm going to be filling those in with nice kind of colourfully swirls. Everything gets done over 2-3 times. So if you miss a bit, if you've got a bit too much colour in one place, doesn't matter, we just go over. So I want these kind of colourful cloud patterns putting in as well. So I've got the black, that's the darkest element. Now I'm going to go with, what have I got? If you've got purple, that's great. What have I got here? This is my little pack of pastels. I don't have my full range in this one. That'll do. It's kind of a dark blue / purpley colour. I've not started mixing or blending anything yet. I'm just throwing the colour on. And we'll go with a sort of a, I like that pink through to yellow. It's almost a red. Let's go through a red through to yellow. My cloudy things, my nebula. So I'm not pressing down with the same consistency. I'm pressing down harder, then lighter, then harder. And I'm getting sort of swirls going up and down and up and down. I'll be careful. I don't want to make it look too regular, too parallel. And then I'm going to throw in some yellow on the top of that. As I say, this will be done several times until I've got the mix I'm happy with. You can see I'm not really thinking too much about it. So the yellow is simply just going on the top of those red lines, but not not in a solid straight line. It's got to come over in like a cloud pattern. Right, it's quite. Can you see all those bits of chalk on there? I'm just going to be using those. I'm going to just start blending everything in now to get a more consistent colour. And if I lose some of the pattern I'm after, it does not matter at this point because I can just go back and add more in. When you do it, if it's looking quite dark, the colour on your finger, try not to go over the yellow bits too much because then you'll just lose all that brightness and it's much harder to get that brightness back. There we go. So you can see we've lost some of that brightness, that's fine. I'm going to start bringing a little bit back. I'm going to go with the white to begin with. And can you see I'm kind of doing it in a swirly sort of pattern? Just slightly over the top. Some of this will be dragged just into here. Now let's get some of that yellow back in as well. I think the trick with this is not to think too much about it. Just have fun with it. And I am going to just add a little bit of pink into this because I like it. It's far more interesting than just a plain black sky. Right, same again. Trying to keep those swirls. We don't want straight lines. My black pastel is not the best. It's leaving some gaps. Doesn't matter. I can just go over it. Right, I'll leave that for now. And now I'm going to quickly throw on this background planner. Because my background paper is blue, I think I'm going to go with a kind of a greeny bluey sort of planet on this occasion. There's that other little moon on the planet, so I'm just leaving a gap for that. And again, following the curves, straight lines will make it feel flatter. And now I'm going to mix in some lighter blues as well. And where's that black gone? I'm going to try and get the back of the planet be really quite dark in comparison to the front of it. So that would be the part that's in the night time. You won't see as much as you do on the other picture I did because you saw a lot more of the planet. So imagine this is coming round and it's like a C shape of the darkness. I've got to bring that in, following those lines like I did there. That's looking okay. Now that is going to be a really bright yellow light source, so I'm going to include some yellow here that's reflecting that light. And a hint of white in there as well. I think that will do pretty much on that. What colour is that going to be? I want it to contrast against that, so I think we'll go with a sort of a reddish kind of planet. I'll start with a basic red and see where we end up. add a little bit of brown into it just to make it look a little less. Again, putting those curves in now. When I'm putting the powder on, it doesn't matter so much if it's a flat colour. As long as I use my fingers to get the curves. If I just start doing straight, I lose everything. And then I'm going to put in the dark side. Sort of like a, as I say, like a C shape, not quite a full C, just sort of like that. And use my finger to soften that in. And as we've said, this is going to be a yellow light source, so I'm going to be using yellow for my highlights here. And that little bit of texture, so it's not overly smooth, just makes it look a little bit just more interesting, really. I mean, you could put very carefully, you could put a few craters and things like that on there as well. A little bit of white just to finish it off, not too much. Right, that's that. Light source, you've done all this with me before. I'm going to go with the yellow. Try and keep this as circular as possible. And then radiate out. I'll go over that again in a minute or two. And then at the centre of your light source, you want the brightest part, which is the white. And that yellow doesn't look quite symmetrical all the way around, so I'm just going to try and keep a sense of symmetry. There we go. And then using quite a sharp edge, I'm just going to very carefully, now I can't really tilt this around, I'll just do it here. I'm going to draw a fine line. Oops. Crossing through the centre, and then I'm just going to soften that out a little bit. There we go. So that's my light source hitting those two planets. I'll very quickly chuck a bit of colour on the bottom, and then I'll do the city sort of bit, which is the main part of this lesson. What colour do we want on this planet? I quite like that sandy effect. I'm going to go with the sand. I don't have a big range of colours in this pack, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to mix in my own sort of sandy, rocky colour. So it's going to be a little bit more sandy than I normally do. I'm still going to put some rocks in because I like them. So if I just do plain yellow, it doesn't really look like sand. It's too artificial. But that said, it is an alien world. It could be any colour I want it to be. But I'm going to make it look a little bit more sandy by adding some browns into it as well. And a little bit of orange, if I can find it. Well, it's not really an orange, it's an orangey brown. Ooh, if I can get it. That's the colour there. Right, and I'm just going to, don't overdo it, try and think where your lines are, where you've got all these textures, and then I'm going to go back over and add some details in a moment. This is basically just to give me some colour to work against. So that needs a bit of tidying up over there as well. Right, back to the black. Tend to use charcoal just because I prefer the way it works. And if my light's coming in here, it's going to be on the back of these ridges. We get the shadows, the more interesting shapes. Get a few more rocks and things in that I like. Got it nice and sandy in some places and slightly rockier in others. And the closer the pictures are to you, so towards the bottom, they'll be in more focus. Right, now over this side I want to do something a bit more interesting. I will be adding a few more highlights later, but I'm not too worried about this bit. I want to focus really on the kind of the cityscape. I'm going to go back to the thick black pastel because it's really dark. And to make something look man-made, or, well, alien-made it could be, I'm just going to put in these strong black horizontals and verticals, because we do not get that in nature. I'm going to break it down into several bits. So we've got some bits over here and some bits that are contrasting really nicely against this planet, because it's so much brighter, you can see so much more. Can you see I've not really thought about it? It's just a series of verticals and horizontals, some thicker, some thinner. You can add a few other bits as well, like a radar dish and things like that on the other picture. And I'm going to put a rocket firing off there-ish. I'll work it out in a moment. Right, blow off the dust. To put a little bit of light into it, I'm just going to get my yellow, and the further away the duller it will appear, the closer the brighter. Just putting a few lights in this space city, and as well as yellows, there might be one or two sort of red lights. Don't need too many. One or two white lights. Make sure it's a nice sharp piece that you're working with, because if it's not sharp, it would be too big for that distance. Light's coming in from this side, so I'm just going to, in fact I'll use the yellow for that rather than the white. Just going to add a few highlights. Not too much. It's too far away for me to see clearly. I'm not really sure what I can see. It's in the distance. We'll just be catching a few lights. That'll do. Right, and let's have our rocket firing off. Best way to do this, where do I want it? Shall I have a bit? I'll just do a straight up, shall I? Straight up's a bit boring. No, I want a slight angle. In fact, I'm going to have it going across the sky. It's not going to be coming from the sky. I'm going to have it going across an angle here. So I'm just going to get my white line. That's the kind of the whoosh of the rocket, and then I'm going to soften that out really gently. Brighter at the end, where the rocket's travelling the fastest, so that's just at the base of the rocket. And then I'm going to add a really, really small amount of yellow and an even smaller amount of red, just in the centre of that. And then I'm going to go back to my charcoal. What have I got? Where's my charcoal? Here it is. And keeping it exactly flat with that line I've just drawn. If it's off at a funny angle, it will look very, very strange. It's got to be ever so straight with this. If you need to draw it out in advance, you can do. I'm just going to put my rocket in place. And if you see what I'm doing here, it's not actually even a rocket, it's just a suggestion of some black shape whizzing off. That's all I'm going to do for that, I think. I think if I was to do this properly, I would say, right, there's too much down at the front. I don't need all of this. I would cut my picture off to about that level. That's where my frame would be, like that. Oh, a few final features. Stars in the sky, just dots. Again, this is from that earlier video, so you don't really need me to show you this, but it just finishes the picture off. Not all in the same spot. And do I want the Saturn rings? Go on then, just because I like doing them. So if I'm doing the rings, I need it to be coming roughly from the centre, slightly beneath, and then it's going to come round like so. And just widen it out slightly. There we go. Let's get that leveled up for the screen. A space picture.